Okay, in this video we're going to look at how we can use CSS to style the navigation menu. So we're just going to focus on this bar across the top here, and at the moment it's got the default colors and the default rollover effects that came when we inserted the navigation menu here using Bootstrap. But what we're going to do is we're going to style that using our own rules to change the color and change the fonts, that kind of thing. Okay, so when we have a look over here, if we switch on the CSS Designer panel window, if you can't see yours, you need to go to the window menu, make sure you've got CSS Designer ticked. What it shows is that we already have a CSS file attached to this web page, and that's the Bootstrap CSS file that was created automatically when we set up the page to start with. That's a read-only file at the moment, so we can't write to it. We can unlock that and make it writable, but we don't want to. You wouldn't want to change the content that's in this CSS file. It's all the stuff that has been pre-made by Bootstrap in order to make the website responsive. So what we need to do is we need to create our own style sheet where we can write our rules that are then going to change the look and the appearance of the web page. And we can do that by clicking on this little plus symbol here. So if I click on that, I can create a new style sheet. I'm going to browse and tell it where I want the style sheet to be saved. And I'm going to make sure it's saved in the CSS folder, again, that was automatically created. Let's make sure it goes into the right folder. So let's choose our folder, the CSS folder here, and I'm just going to call that layout, and click save, and click OK, and we now have our own style sheet, and it's ready for us to write some rules. And then you have to think, well, which rules do I want to write? And this is where you can just click on elements on your page, and you can use the rules that have been written for the Bootstrap CSS and then use those rules in your layout CSS. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to click on this this heading that we've got here. This is our company name that we put in earlier. So I'm just going to click on it by selecting it, and then I'm going to come over here and click on the plus button next to selectors. And what it does is it picks up the rule that is used by Bootstrap to control this element on the page. Well, we can use that rule and add it to our style sheet, and because our style sheet comes in after the Bootstrap one, our rule will overwrite this existing one that's inside Bootstrap. So I'm just going to press the enter key to say that's the rule that we want, and then down here we can decide which properties we want to change. This first tab is the layout. We can alter text properties, border properties, background properties, or any other CSS properties. So what I need to do here is I need to change the font color. So I'm going to go into the text, come to color, and I'm going to choose a color, and I want CCC, so I want 6 of those, and then if I just press enter, it's going to change the color of that text. So it's gone to this lighter gray. I also want to change its position, so I'm going to go to layout, scroll down, and I'm going to change the margin over here. I'm going to change that to 1, and then I need to change the value here to EMs. So EMs are a really nice measurement to work in, and what 1 EM is equivalent to is about 14 pixels. So if you were to put in 2 EMs, you know that's 28 pixels. If you were to put in 0.5 EMs, that would be 7 pixels. What that's done is it's created a margin at the top of this. In other words, it's pushed that text down, so it's now sort of sitting more central within our navigation menu. Okay, I think the next thing to do is to actually set the navigation bar itself. So I'm just going to pick that up and then come over here and say that I want to add another, this one here, I want to add another CSS selector. Again, making sure that we're working on our style sheet. I'm going to come in, it's going to pick up the bar, pick up the actual CSS rule that's in place from Bootstrap, but we can use the same one. So I'm just going to press return, and then with this bar I'm going to come in and change the background color. So the background color that I'm going to go for is going to be free. So I'm just going to go for 6 threes, press enter, and it should change the color of my background bar. Now obviously you can click here and pick any color you wanted. So if you wanted a red bar, you would just choose the red and it would change that color there. Okay, the next thing to come in is to come in and select one of the buttons itself. So now that I've got one of the buttons selected, I'm just going to come in and create another CSS rule for one of the buttons. And what I'm going to do there is I'm going to come in and change the font color. So come to the font color that I've got for that navigation button, and I'm going to make that the same color that we made for our title. So that's going to be 6 C's, and I'm just going to press enter. Now that's changed the whole of the navigation bar, so that's not quite what I wanted it to do. So I'm just going to remove that CSS selector by pressing minus, and then I just need to make sure that I am selecting the correct part of the page. So I just want the button itself, and we'll add in the new CSS rule again. So we're going to pick up this one here, and we'll try this again and see if it will work. So we'll come in and we'll change the font color, and we'll go in and we'll try our CCC again. And this time it has. So sometimes it might get it right, sometimes you need to delete it and try it again, but you can see that it only changed the text color, not the color of the whole of the bar. Now I also want to set a rollover effect on these as well, so when people put their mouse over, I want the color to change. And to do that, it's difficult to select the rollover by just clicking here. What I need to do is duplicate this. So I'm going to duplicate this one by right mouse clicking on it, choosing duplicate, and then I'm just going to add in :hover, and that is the hover state. So we are now going to write a rule that controls what happens when people hover over a link, in other words a linked element within our navigation bar. So now that I've got the hover state set here, I'm going to go and choose a color, and for this one I'm just going to make it white, which I know is FFFFF. So there we go, we're going to make the hover state white. So let's just try that out. Let's just do a file, and we want to save. So I'm just going to save that, and we'll preview it then in Safari. And it wants us to save the CSS file that we've been working on as well, because we've been making changes and adding selectors to this. It wants that to be saved, so we're going to say yep, save that as well. There's our navigation menu, so you can see that the title's moved down and that the color's changed, and you can see here, look, the rollover effect. So we had that light gray, when you hover over, it's going to go to white. So that's one of the effects that we've created there. The other thing that would be nice would be if it highlighted this button. So if this button stayed on as a particular color to show that we were working on the home page. Now to do that, you'll need to come in and select the button itself, and then we need to go back a step. So we don't want to pick up the A tag, we want to pick up the list item. So now that we've got the list item selected, we can come over and add our new CSS rule. In fact, what I want to do is with that list item, I want to add a class to it. So I'm going to add my own CSS class, which I'm just going to call .active to indicate that this is the active button. So I've just called that .active. If I go back to my allied tag, I need to press enter. So .active, not click off anywhere, but just press return, and it's going to add in this .active class. Now that's gone and made it this light color that we've got here, but the text, for example, is gone white, and what I want that to do is I want that to be sort of a blacker color, the text there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create my own CSS rule for this. So I'm going to click on the plus sign here. It's come up with the active link that I require. So I'm just going to enter that, and then I'm going to come and change the font color. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back and choose our, not that one, we want the 333 one. So there we go. And that will make the font color black. And then we've got our rollover effect where it will turn white when we put our mouse over it. So I'm quite happy with the way that that looks. Let's just do a file and a save again. In fact, we'll just go straight to preview in a browser, and hopefully it will save it on the way. So yeah, we want to save the changes and save the changes made to the style sheet as well. And that's what I mean by a little indicator button. So we've still got our rollover effects going on, but we've got a nice little indicator button there now to show us what page we are currently on. Just one more thing that I want to show you as well when we're sort of styling navigation bars. If I go back up and pick up this style here, and I know that that was our first one up here, so that's our navbar header. So I'm just going to click on that CSS rule there. We can come into the fonts and we can actually choose a different font family. So you could come in and pick up font families. Now there's some preset font families here, or you could go into manage fonts. Now when you go into manage fonts, you can actually come in and pick up Adobe Edge web fonts. and these give you a much sort of greater selection or choice of fonts. Now these fonts sit on a server and then they're loaded into your web page when it's previewed in a browser. So it allows you to use unusual fonts, not the common standard fonts. And you can actually search for different fonts. So you could say I just want sans serif, or I want serif fonts. You could say I want scripty fonts. We could go here for sort of handmade fonts, and it will filter it and give us those kind of looks. So for example, I might choose Chewy here, and if I click that and click done, it's going to add Chewy into my font list. So now if I come over here and choose this, I've now got Chewy as my font list. It's now been added, and when I click that, it would have changed the font here to be that kind of effect that we wanted. What we need there next is we need to just increase the size of that font. So I'm just going to go to font size, and what we'll do is we'll go into EMs and we'll make it, for example, let's try 2 EMs. So that's changed that font. I might need to go back into the layouts that we did earlier. By the way, you can tick this box here. Instead of scrolling through all of these options, you can just say, just show me what I've set already. So when I tick that, it says the only thing you've set is the margin top. That looks like it's too much now. So I think what we might do is we might put that down to, let me click in there to change that. I might put that down to 0.5 and then have a look. So I think that might be still too much. Let's just try it at 0.2. It's a little bit of play, a little bit of trial and error, and that's why you play around with it, and that's why it's nice to have a live view as well. And again, if we were to preview this in the browser, you can see now that what we have is we have that different kind of font, that Chewy font. Remember, there's lots there for you to choose from, but it allows you to use these different kinds of fonts instead of your standard ones. So that's just a quick insight into how you can style elements within the Bootstrap framework using your own style sheet and using selectors just by clicking around. And it's a bit of trial and error, it's a bit of playing around, like I had to delete a selector and then put a new one in again, and it's changing properties backwards and forwards. But this sort of visual approach that is now available in Dreamweaver makes it a lot easier for us when we're trying to set our CSS properties on pages that we're building.